Bruce, you are the person that brought Parkrun to South Africa.
Yes,
And
my favorite topic of conversation.
and it's actually something that is so inspirational. We see that South Africa is currently in the third position with attendance on parkruns. Tell us the story about Parkrun.
It's too wonderful. So again, and you have to tell me the problem with this conversation is too much indefinite article I, talking about myself all the time. But if I had to say that about my running career, my comrades' wins were for myself in a way. It's great. It was me being a soldier, being a bit of a warrior, and competing and winning. If I inspired people to run and to run comrades, that is fantastic. But Parkrun is legacy stuff. It's absolutely legacy stuff. It's stuff that I can leave behind. I would be so concerned if I was a crooked politician in South Africa now, that is how history is going to write about you. You're a crook, a thief, a corrupt individual. That is how history will write about you. And you cannot alter that history. I would love it in obviously a small way, that if history had to say Bruce brought Parkrun to South Africa, now we're talking. That's something you can be proud of. So it's 5Ks free on a Saturday morning. It was started by a South African mate of mine, Paul Sinton Hewitt, who's a boykie from Poch. He went to Poch Boys High, and he had a 5K run in London in a park called Bushy Park because he was lonely. He had emigrated and he thought it was a mistake. His wife had divorced him and he'd been fired from his job and he was injured. And he invited a few people to come around and run 5Ks in Bushy Park, mainly so he could have coffee with people afterwards because he was lonely. And 13 people came. And from that, Parkrun grew. And it grew so slowly to begin with that you would never have known. You would not have seen it. And then a little bit like I mentioned Apollo 11 earlier on, if you want to be a pensioner, the rocket that took the Apollos to the moon was a Saturn V rocket. Watch, when you finish, watch a Saturn V rocket launch. The first 3 seconds after they have you hear the commentator saying, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, all engines running, and it goes nowhere. And because it had to burn half its body weight to get going. And that's the same as Parkrun. And then the Saturn V starts accelerating. And you hear the commentator say, lift off, we have a lift off. And then the tower is in, the next thing it's going 7 times the speed of sound. And it was the same with Parkrun. It just went nowhere for a lot of energy, a lot of work from the guys trying to get it to go. And then it took off. And now it's 8 million people around the world, 23 countries. And so Paul asked me to start Parkrun in South Africa because I went across to run London Marathon. He persuaded me to run Bushy Parkrun the day before. And I saw the magic, so they persuaded me. And we started the same thing, one parkrun at Delta Park in Johannesburg, and 26 people came. And the following week, I think there were 17 people because it was raining. And then also very slowly grew. Eventually, one of the guys said, I'm loving my Saturday morning run, but it's too far for me to drive. Do you mind if I start one in Rudaport? So the second one was Rudaport. The third one was Benoni. And if you guessed all day, you wouldn't know where the fourth one was, but it was actually started in East London. And it was quite a while until the Cape started. And then the Cape started, as we know, with the beautiful scenery and some of the most wonderful park runs. And so we grew from 26 people to 1.2 million registered park runners in South Africa, average between 40 and 60,000 people running, and most importantly, walking each Saturday. So we should be called Park Walk because by far people actually walk around the way through it, and some walk the whole way without running a single step. And we're also proud of the fact that we have a slightly higher percentage of women participants than men. And it's free. It's a Saturday morning. Just print your barcode and bring it with you. And we are missing it so desperately in lockdown. It needs to be back this Saturday. It needs to be back. And we're fighting and lobbying as hard as we can because we now have the research that can actually prove that outdoors, your chances of catching COVID are so reduced. Your chances of catching COVID are magnified exponentially if you're inside a church, by the way, or or, you know, at some inside gathering, out in the fresh air. So anyway, I don't want to get into my hobby. I mean, I'm so angry about lockdown. I think it was the greatest disaster ever to befall this country. We should have locked down our elderly and our vulnerable and told them to be careful. And we should have kept the economy open. And maybe you could have 40,000 fans at a Springbok All Black game or a Kaizer Chiefs, you know, Orlando Pirates game. Maybe you have to keep those crowds apart for a while, but we should have kept the economy going. And we will look back and say this was a most catastrophic blunder in South Africa's history. And the damage, the post-lockdown trauma will be unbelievable. It'll take us a decade to recover. I mean, anyway, but we want Parkrun to come back as fast as we can, because people need to be with people. And Parkrun is actually not really about the exercise, because if you only walk or run once a week, you're not going to lose weight or get that healthy. It's about communities. People cannot wait to see each other on a Saturday morning. And you see people hugging each other, and then it's all about going for coffee and breakfast afterwards, and the number of marriages that have taken place because of Parkrun. And, you know, I'm waxing lyrical, but I'm very passionate about it. And my dream is, at the moment, we're about 225 different events. My dream is 1,000 events in South Africa, and that we go up into Africa. And that if I could be responsible for taking Parkrun to the continent of Africa, wow, I'll die happy, you know. But even if it's only South Africa, we're in Namibia, we're in Eswatini, Zimbabwe screaming at us, Tanzania screaming at us, Botswana, they all want Parkrun. So as soon as we can get going again, that's my dream, to really get going.
So Bruce, why has Parkrun stayed at a 5 kilometer and not progressed to a 10 kilometer or maybe more?
Because it's a doable distance. So I'll explain what I mean, and yet it works brilliantly for elite athletes. So when I didn't have a funny, dodgy knee like I've got now and whatever, my first Parkrun in Delta Park, in Bushy Park in England, I was the first 50-year-old home, and I went flat out, you know, and I really loved it. So as a kind of, I'm using the word in inverted commas, but as a kind of elite runner, it works beautifully. 5Ks is a brilliant distance if you run it honestly, because after 2 kilometers, you are sucking air and you're hurting. You're on the red line and you are hurting. But if you're Tani Labuschagne and you are large and unfit, you can walk with Gigi, your little Maltese poodle, and you can walk the whole thing and also benefit from it. And nobody will laugh at you. And we will take your time and we will wait for you. And that is where the greatest joy of Parkrun has been. If we bounced it up to 10Ks, Tani Labuschagne is not coming. That's too far. But if you want to bounce up to 10Ks, and that's where we have been fantastic as well, we're a nursery school, a kindergarten for more serious running. And so many of our parkrunners who started off parkrunning go on to run more serious distance. We have a hashtag Parkrun to Comrades. One of my great friends,
Awesome.
She's a horse rider. She does dressage. That's her great passion. She came to Parkrun because her hubby kept going to Parkrun. And eventually said, oh, well, if you can't beat him, join him. She's gone from Parkrun to Comrades. She will run her 6th Comrades Marathon next year from Parkrun, who started it off, you know. And then I left off a whole feature about Parkrun, which is really bad of me, and that is that the magic of Parkrun is that it is run by volunteers, people who come along and give their time for no reward. And when Paul asked me to start Parkrun in South Africa, I said, my initial concern was, I said, Paul, it's not going to work in South Africa because South Africans don't volunteer. And that was because my experience of volunteer was from the 2010 Football World Cup, where I was quite involved as the spokesman for breweries at that time, promoting the World Cup. And I saw what happened. There were volunteers, there were car guards, and there were ushers who showed you to your seat for the game, but they weren't really volunteers, because you got a free outfit, a free hamburger every day, a free cold drink. And I can't think of, imagine being a volunteer watching Portugal playing Brazil. That's not volunteer. That's like a 2,000 Rand free ticket you got there to watch that game. You know, Portugal, Brazil, or Brazil, Argentina, or England, Germany, you can go. So I said, that's not going to work, but I was proved magnificently wrong. Thank goodness. South Africans do volunteer. They volunteer in their droves. They give their time. It's, you know, they stand there in the pouring rain because parkrunners are so addicted that it can be lashing rain. They're still coming. They are still coming. And so the poor volunteers have to get there an hour before and set up the thing. And it's just magnificent. I mean, quickly, I don't know how much time we've got, but my favorite volunteer story is Port Alfred. Port Alfred Parkrun, they could not get volunteers. They were struggling because everyone in Port Alfred wanted to take part. So eventually the run director, so in other words, the boss of the Port Alfred Parkrun, went to the old ladies' old age home in Port Alfred and gave a talk about Parkrun. Wow! The next Saturday was full up with old women and guys from the old age home who the matron wrote to him and said, you have extended the lives of these people by a couple of years. Saturday morning is the most exciting day of the week for them. The ladies spend hours getting their hair ready because they go to the parkrun and there's all these hunks running. And they go for breakfast with everybody afterwards, whereas before they used to sit in front of the television with a cup of tea full of sugar and watch the TV. Now they are doing something meaningful and people are thanking them. You know, it can be doing timing, standing at a corner with a flag, directing people, being a marshal, whatever it be. But imagine running, you get there and people say, thank you, thank you. It is what happens at Parkrun. People get thanked for their contribution. And I think we all need to be needed. And Parkrun gives people that gift.